What if I told you that Frank Sinatra's greatest love affair wasn't with Ava Gardner or Mia Farrow, but with the most famous woman in the world? What if this secret relationship was so dangerous that it cost Frank his closest friendships, his political connections, and nearly his entire career? This is the story Hollywood has kept buried for 60 years. The story of Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe, the love so intense, so forbidden, that it changed both their lives forever. And when powerful people got involved, this love story became a tragedy that shook the entertainment world to its core. Welcome back to Sinatra's Untold Legacy. Today we're uncovering the most explosive secret in Frank's life, his passionate affair with Marilyn Monroe, and how it led to the most devastating betrayal of his career. Hit that like button if you're ready for the truth, because this story will show you a side of Frank Sinatra you've never seen before. Vulnerable, desperate, and willing to risk everything for love. Picture this. It's a rainy night in February 1957. Frank Sinatra is at Capitol Records, laying down tracks for what would become Come Fly With Me. He's 42, devastated by his divorce from Ava Gardner, trying to rebuild his life through music. Suddenly, the studio door opens. In walks the most beautiful woman in America, Marilyn Monroe. But she's not the glamorous movie star the world knows. Her makeup is smeared, her eyes red from crying. She's just fled from a brutal fight with her husband, playwright Arthur Miller. What happened next changed everything. Frank found Marilyn crying in the parking lot. Instead of approaching her like a fan or a colleague, he simply handed her his handkerchief and said, "Baby, whatever he did, he's a fool." That moment, that simple act of kindness began the most secret and passionate love affair in Hollywood history. George Jacobs, Frank's personal valet for 15 years, revealed in his memoirs, "Mr. Seth was different with Miss Monroe. I'd seen him with Ava, with Lauren Bacall, with every woman who walked through that door.
But Marilyn,
She made him nervous.
actually nervous.
The man who owned Las Vegas was intimidated by a broken-hearted actress. From spring 1957 onward, Frank and Marilyn began the most carefully orchestrated secret affair in entertainment history. Frank rented a small apartment in Beverly Hills under a fake name, Mr. Francis Albert. Marilyn would arrive in disguise, often wearing brunette wigs and oversized sunglasses. They called it the hideaway. What made this affair different from Frank's other relationships was the emotional intensity. Marilyn's personal assistant and best friend, Lena Pepitone, later revealed, when Marilyn talked about Frank, her whole face changed. She'd get this dreamy look and say, "Lena, he sees the real me, not Marilyn Monroe, just Norma Jean." Frank was equally smitten. His pianist and close friend, Bill Miller, noticed the change immediately. Frank would be in the middle of rehearsal and just stop. He'd get this far-away look and say, "Play that again, but slower. Make it hurt." We knew he was thinking about her. The affair intensified through 1958 and 1959. Frank would write special arrangements just for Marilyn, singing to her privately in the hideaway. She would cook for him. Simple meals that reminded him of his childhood in Hoboken. For both of them, it was the first relationship where they could just be themselves. In 2019, a storage unit in Las Vegas was auctioned off after decades of abandonment. Hidden inside were 47 handwritten letters, the private correspondence between Frank and Marilyn that spanned from 1957 to 1962. These letters reveal a love so deep, so desperate, it reads like poetry written in pain. Frank's letter from Valentine's Day, 1958. "My dearest Marilyn, when I sing in the wee small hours, I'm singing about those nights when I can't sleep because you're not here. You've ruined me for anyone else, baby, and I wouldn't have it any other way." Marilyn's response, "My darling Francis, you make me feel like the woman I always wanted to be, in your arms. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be perfect. I can just be Norma Jean from the orphanage, and that's enough for you. That's everything to me. But the most revealing letter is from December 1959, when Marilyn writes, I know we can never be together publicly. I know what they'd say about us. But Frank, these stolen moments are worth more to me than all the movie contracts in the world. Frank's reply shows his growing desperation. Baby, I don't care what they say. I'd give up everything. The career, the fame, all of it, just to wake up next to you every morning. You're killing me with this secrecy, but I can't live without you either. By 1960, Frank was juggling two massive commitments, his secret relationship with Marilyn and his very public support of John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign. Frank believed that helping JFK win the White House would cement his place in history, not just as an entertainer, but as a political kingmaker. What Frank didn't anticipate was that these two worlds would collide in the most destructive way possible. The collision happened at a campaign fundraiser in December 1960. Frank had organized the event, using all his Hollywood connections to raise money for JFK. Marilyn attended as Frank's secret guest, carefully seated far from him to avoid suspicion. But JFK noticed her immediately. According to multiple witnesses, the president-elect spent most of the evening watching Marilyn from across the room. Peter Lawford, JFK's brother-in-law and Rat Pack member, later admitted, Jack was mesmerized. He kept asking me who she was with, how well I knew her. I should have seen the warning signs. When the evening ended, JFK approached Frank with an unusual request. Frank, I'd like to get to know Miss Monroe better. Perhaps you could arrange an introduction. Frank's world tilted on its axis. His closest political ally was asking him to deliver the woman he loved. What followed was the most agonizing period of Frank's life. For 3 months from January to March 1961, he tried to keep JFK and Marilyn apart while maintaining both relationships. Frank's strategy was desperate. He would arrange group social events where JFK and Marilyn could meet casually, hoping that would satisfy the president's curiosity without creating opportunities for private interaction. But JFK was persistent. He began calling Frank directly, asking about Marilyn's availability for private dinners or White House visits. The pressure was enormous. How do you say no to the President of the United States? Marilyn, meanwhile, was torn between loyalty to Frank and fascination with the most powerful man in America. Her diary entries from this period, discovered after her death, reveal her inner turmoil. March 15, 1961. Frank is acting strange, jealous and possessive in ways I've never seen. But I understand, he's scared. So am I. This new attention is flattering but terrifying. March 22, 1961. Had another call today. He wants to see me alone. Frank would die if he knew. But what if I say no? What happens to Frank's career? What happens to us? On March 24, 1961, Marilyn made the decision that would destroy her relationship with Frank forever. She agreed to a private meeting with JFK at Peter Lawford's Santa Monica home. Frank wasn't invited. When Frank learnt about the meeting, and he found out within hours, thanks to his network of contacts, his reaction was volcanic. Sammy Davis Jr. Seppa's personal diary describes that night. Frank went completely crazy. I mean, I've seen him angry before, but this was different. This was heartbreak mixed with rage, and it was terrifying to watch. Frank drove straight to Lawford's house and demanded to be let in. When Lawford refused, Frank threatened to end their friendship permanently. "You set this up," Frank screamed. According to neighbors who called the police, "You betrayed me for your brother-in-law." The confrontation lasted 3 hours. When it was over, Frank had lost his two most important relationships, his political connection to the president and his romantic relationship with Marilyn. Because from that night forward, Marilyn chose the president over the singer. The spring and summer of 1961 marked the darkest period of Frank's life since his career collapse in the early 1950s. He began drinking heavily, not his usual social drinking, but serious, destructive alcoholism. His performances suffered. Reviews from that period describe a singer who seemed distracted, emotionally disconnected, and going through the motions. Audiences noticed that Frank's usual swagger was replaced by a hollow sadness. Lorisbinas temenias tednas temenias. Rizundinas temenias. Dean Martin became so concerned that he staged an intervention in Frank's Palm Springs home. According to Martin's widow, Jen, the conversation was brutal. Dean told Frank, "You're killing yourself over a woman who chose someone else." "That's not the Frank Sinatra I know." Frank's response was devastating. "The Frank Sinatra you know was just an act. This is who I really am. Us, a guy from Hoboken who lost the only woman he ever really loved." But Frank's pain was about to turn into something much more dangerous: revenge. In August 1962, Frank made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He invited Marilyn to his Cal Neva Lodge in Lake Tahoe for what he called one last weekend together. It was supposed to be a reconciliation. Instead, it became a disaster that ended both their careers. The weekend started promisingly. Marilyn arrived looking healthier than she had in months. Frank had arranged for complete privacy. No press, no interruptions, just the two of them trying to recapture what they'd lost. But Frank had also invited someone else, Sam Giancana, the Chicago mob boss who was one of his closest friends. Frank's reasoning was simple. He wanted to show Marilyn that he still had power, still had dangerous friends, still mattered in the world. It was a desperate attempt to win her back by demonstrating his importance. The plan backfired spectacularly. What happened that weekend at Cal Neva remained secret for decades. But in 1995, a retired FBI agent named William Romer revealed the truth in his memoir. The FBI had been surveilling both Frank and Giancana for months. They had photographers positioned around the Cal Neva property, and they captured dozens of images of Marilyn with known organized crime figures. The photographs showed Marilyn laughing with Giancana, swimming in Frank's pool with other mob associates, and engaging in what the FBI described as intimate conversation with subjects under federal investigation. When these photographs reached certain powerful people in Washington, the reaction was swift and merciless. Within 48 hours of Marilyn's return to Los Angeles, she received a phone call that changed everything. The exact words of that conversation have never been revealed, but the result was immediate. Marilyn cut all contact with Frank and began making preparations to tell the truth about everything. She would never get that chance. On August 4, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home. The official cause of death was listed as probable suicide due to an overdose of sleeping pills. Frank was performing at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas when he got the news. According to witnesses, he stopped mid-song, walked off stage, and didn't speak to anyone for 3 days. But the most heartbreaking detail comes from George Jacobs, Frank's valet. In his memoir, Jacobs reveals that Frank immediately flew to Los Angeles and went to Marilyn's house, even though it was sealed off by police. Mr. Sayers stood outside that house for hours, Jacobs writes. He didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't move. He just stood there staring at the windows. Finally, I heard him whisper, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Frank never spoke publicly about Marilyn's death, but those closest to him say he blamed himself for the rest of his life. The Cal Neva incident didn't just cost Frank his relationship with Marilyn, it cost him his political connections entirely. His support of JFK, which had once seemed so valuable, became a liability. In November 1962, just 3 months after Marilyn's death, Frank received devastating news. The Nevada Gaming Commission was revoking his casino licenses due to his association with Sam Giancana. The official reason was unsuitability for casino ownership, but everyone knew the real reason. Frank was being punished for Calneva, and there was nothing he could do about it. The political exile was complete when plans for JFK to stay at Frank's Palm Springs compound were abruptly cancelled. Instead, the president chose to stay with Bing Crosby, Mitras Frank's longtime rival. Stay with Bing Crosby, Mitras Frank's longtime rival. Frank learned about the change from the newspapers. The humiliation was complete. For the remaining 36 years of his life, Frank Sinatra carried the weight of the Marilyn Monroe affair. He never spoke about it publicly, never wrote about it in his attempted autobiography, never even acknowledged that it had happened. But the evidence was there for those who looked closely. Frank never had another relationship that lasted longer than a few years. He never again showed the vulnerable, romantic side that Marilyn had brought out in him. His daughter Tina Sinatra, in her 2000 memoir, hints at the truth. There was someone before my father married Barbara, who broke his heart in a way that Ava Gardner never did. He never told us who it was, but sometimes we'd catch him staring at old photographs with a look of such sadness that it scared us. Nancy Sinatra Jr. is more direct in her assessment. My father had many loves, but only one woman who truly understood him. When she died, part of him died too. Why has this story remained secret for so long? The answer lies in the power of the people involved and the explosive nature of the revelations. Everyone who knew about the affair had reasons to keep quiet. Frank's career depended on maintaining his public image. Political figures couldn't afford to be connected to the scandal. Hollywood executives wanted to protect their investments. But the most compelling reason for the cover-up is this. The story reveals how power really works in America. It shows how political influence, organized crime, and entertainment industry all intersected in ways that the public was never meant to see. The Frank Sinatra-Marilyn Monroe affair wasn't just a love story. It was a window into a hidden world where the most powerful people in the country played games with human lives. If you want to understand Frank's true feelings about Marilyn, don't listen to his words, listen to his music from 1962 onward. The pain is there in every note. In the Wee Small Hours, recorded just months after Marilyn's death, contains some of the most heartbreaking vocals Frank ever delivered. Music critics have always wondered why Frank's interpretation of this song became so much more emotional in later years. Now we know. Angel Eyes from his 1962 album includes a verse that Frank added himself. Try to think that love's not around, still it's uncomfortably near. My old heart ain't gaining no ground, because my angel eyes ain't here. Those who knew about the affair recognized these as love songs to Marilyn, musical letters to a woman he could never have back. The Frank Sinatra-Marilyn Monroe affair changed both their lives in ways that reverberated for decades. For Frank, it marked the end of his political ambitions and the beginning of a more isolated, cautious approach to relationships. For Marilyn, the affair represented both the happiest and most dangerous period of her life. In Frank, she found someone who loved Norma Jean, not just the movie star. But that love also put her at the center of a power struggle she never fully understood. The tragedy is that their love was real. In a world full of Hollywood fakery and political manipulation, Frank and Marilyn found something authentic together. But authenticity is dangerous when it threatens powerful people. 60 years later, questions about this affair continue to emerge. Was Marilyn's death really suicide, or was she eliminated because she knew too much? Did Frank's political connections really abandon him, or was he pushed out for other reasons? Recent declassification of government documents has revealed that both Frank and Marilyn were under much more extensive surveillance than previously known.
FBI had detailed files on their relationship, complete with photographs, recorded phone conversations, and witness statements.
But the most intriguing question is this: what happened to the other letters? We know about 47 that were discovered in 2019. But Marilyn's housekeeper claimed there were boxes and boxes of correspondence between them. Where are those letters now, and what secrets do they contain? In 1995, 3 years before his death, Frank Sinatra gave his final major interview to journalist Pete Hamill. Near the end of the conversation, Hamill asked Frank about his greatest regret. Whether she is severed too. Whether she's amtentees and a fake about them too. Whether she's amtentees 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 amtentees. Frank was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I hurt someone I loved because I was scared. I was scared of losing everything else, so I lost the most important thing. That's not the kind of man I wanted to be." When Hamill asked who he meant, Frank just shook his head. "Some stories are too sad to tell, Pete. Some stories die with you." We believe he was talking about Marilyn Monroe, the woman who saw through his act, who loved Norma Jean, who paid the ultimate price for being part of Frank Sinatra's dangerous world. And so we reach the end of Hollywood's most forbidden love story. The secret affair between Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe, a love so powerful it threatened presidencies, ended political careers, and possibly cost lives. This wasn't just another celebrity scandal. This was the collision of entertainment, politics, and organized crime at the highest levels. It was a love story that became a tragedy, a private affair that became a matter of national security. Frank Sinatra loved many women, but only one made him forget he was Frank Sinatra. Only one made him want to be just Francis Albert Sinatra from Hoboken, New Jersey. And when he lost her, he lost part of himself that he never got back. The story of Frank and Marilyn shows us that even the most powerful people in the world are vulnerable when it comes to love. It reminds us that behind the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, real human hearts are breaking, real dreams are being shattered. So, what's your take on this forbidden love story? Do you think Frank and Marilyn could have made it work if they'd been allowed to be together publicly? Was their relationship doomed from the start, or was it destroyed by outside forces? And here's the big question: do you think Marilyn's death was really suicide, or was there something more sinister involved? The evidence we've presented today suggests there was much more to her death than the official story admits. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This story has been hidden for 60 years. It's time for us to talk about it openly. If this video opened your eyes to a side of Frank Sinatra you never knew existed, smash that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from the chairman of the board's life. Hit the notification bell because next week we're diving into another explosive Sinatra secret: his involvement in the JFK assassination conspiracy theories that the government still won't discuss. This tide is. And remember, Frank Sinatra's life was full of secrets. But the biggest secret of all might be how much pain he carried behind that confident smile. The man who sang about doing it his way spent his final years regretting the one time he didn't follow his heart. Thanks for watching, Sinatra fans. Until next time, keep asking the questions that Hollywood doesn't want you to ask.